Previously on In Each Retelling.
And unfortunately, we now have to address the looming specter in the room, because the looming specter in the room is back on the table. You see, that is the one benefit to this strike. The strike was holding us back, was giving us a safety barrier against the looming specter. But the strike is over, the barrier has fallen, and now, like a curse come to steal us away from our homes and lands.
Oh, God! Oh!
Oh, God, no!
The hellhounds are loose!
I have dedicated too much fucking brain space to that stupid fucking show. The looming specter of ABC's Once Upon a Time has returned to us.
And further specter of Once Upon a Time. That's the truly scary part of this episode.
It comes a little closer. Put a can on it, put a lid on it. Megasode.
It's coming. It's coming. Shh.
I guess we will never really know why, but I remember once upon a time.
Welcome to In Each Retelling, and it is our 1-year anniversary. We are the podcast where we explore all the ways old tales are made new. I am your host, Jasmine Garcia, and joining me today are...
Shami and what's with the purple fog rolling over Storybrooke? Are they trying to do an adaptation of The Mist?
Working diagonally to the whims of this podcast, it's River.
My name is Callie, and you will never know my real name, like you shouldn't have known Golds!
I mean, to be fair, Gold doesn't have a first name. Rumpelstiltskin does.
That's my problem, actually, but we'll get into that. My dear listeners, it is finally time.
The looming specter has arrived.
The dread specter has come for us.
Indeed, it is time to finally start tackling Once Upon a fucking Time.
Greetings, I am IER-60, Star Wars Retelling Connections. Point of intersection found. This is a degree 3. Carolyn Hennessy voices Leah Organa in Resistance and plays the mean life in The Rise of Skywalker. In addition, Giancarlo Esposito plays Moff Gideon in The Mandalorian.
Oh, thank you so much, Ire, and thank you for not doing every episode, because I know you just woke up from hibernation, and the last thing we need to do is overload you so soon. Welcome back, little buddy.
I vote that this is our year episode. We do a season a year, that way we don't kill ourselves.
Or do a grippy sock vacation.
Because listeners, besties, it has been an ordeal to get through just the first season, and that's saying something.
I was used to seeing it once a week, but seeing it, marathoning it all at once... Oh...
This isn't even my first time marathoning it, and I don't know what it was. I think it's because I had to take notes, otherwise I was gonna be not completely in season 1. I was going to be into the implications of further down the line, so I had to, make sure I had all my thoughts focused in. But man, oh man, did watching this season feel like pulling teeth sometimes, and this is one of the better seasons!
Swiss cheese memory is a blessing.
Yeah. Here's the thing, guys. You know our usual shtick. We usually talk about our connections to the stories being adapted. If we did that for Once Upon a Time, however, I think we would need that grippy sock vacation Callie was talking about.
I think we'd be here till the heat death of the universe.
We'd be here for 28 years, which is how long the curse took.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that as well. But...
What an odd number.
So specific.
We're already off to a great start. What is everyone's connection to this juggernaut of a series?
I'm millennial. Enough said.
I literally just saw a trailer of it on my screen. I saw it was a bunch of fairy tales. I saw that there was Rumpelstiltskin there, and that is my favorite fairy tale from my childhood. And that's what drove me to watch.
I am Gen Z. I was Henry's age when this show started.
River, every fucking I'm gonna start kicking you off episodes if you keep making me fucking feel old. I will kick you out of this. I will kick you out of the walls.
Excuse me, it is my show!
I don't care!
I have...
It's my wall you're dwelling in!
There are shows that are... The best way I can put it is there are shows that are good, there are shows that are bad, there are shows that are your favorite, and there are shows that you can't help but have a formative experience in building your taste in media. Unfortunately for me, Once is the latter. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know if I am the television viewer, writer, creator that I am if I didn't ingest Once Upon a Time week by week as it was coming out. For better and for worse. Like, I don't know if I am the type of person I am who has, like, super strong opinions about Robin Hood mythos if I didn't watch Once Upon a Time in 2010.
River, you are the only one here who watched it all the way through. Am I correct in saying that?
No, I dropped off around season 5? Season 4, season 5?
You held on longer than I did.
Yep.
I got out after the author bullshit, before the Dark Swan stuff, and like Camelot, because I just said no,
Listeners, this will make sense in context.
I'm done. I'm tapping out.
Shami, let's be real. If they are listening to the Once Upon a Time episode, there's a non-zero chance they know the whole.
Yeah, for those of you who are coming into Once Upon a Time, or coming into a podcast discussing the series having not seen it, I feel...
Hi, welcome to the podcast. Gummy snacks are on the left. The alcohol is on the right. You will need both of those to enjoy this.
Abject horror is down the hall. I feel like there is no, like, overall summary that I can give that will sum up every season of this show, because each season tended to redefine itself as the plot moved along, which was, like, actually kind of good. Hot take, like, the best thing I can say about that, like, the progression from seasons 1 to 2 and onwards, sort of falls apart after 3, but they get condensed, and that's for later discussions. I got a lot of thoughts about that. We're not gonna get there yet. We're gonna stick with season 1, because I'm a good noodle, and I told myself that I was gonna do this.
The only constant were the number of family members who were added onto Henry's family tree.
To quote David, it is a good thing we don't have Thanksgiving in our land, because that dinner would suck.
And fun fact, just in the first season alone, to make Henry's family tree even more complicated, Henry is Emma's son, which makes Snow White his grandmother, which makes Regina the Evil Queen his step-great-grandmother, but he is also Regina's adopted son, which makes him Emma's step-uncle, which makes him his own great-step-uncle.
Their family tree is more of a reef than someone's in Arkansas.
I was gonna say more of a wreath than the Habsburgs.
That works too. Listeners, I'm allowed to make Arkansas jokes.
Yeah.
Here's the summary that I have best come up with.
Alright, so my connection to it. I was literally in the midst of my college years when I first saw that trailer. It was like this was literally made for me, because as I mentioned in the very first episode, I kind of already had a similar idea to this at one point. It's still kind of cooking up here in the old noodle, because I'm sure I could do it better at this point. Just the fact that it was this big old fairy tale crossover where they're kind of thrust into the real world. They all have magical amnesia. I'm like, oh, this is exactly my kind of shit. And that is how they tricked me into watching a fucking soap opera for 2 seasons before I gave up.
The best pitch that I can give for Once Upon a Time in, like, just season 1, because everything else gets way more absurd the further we go down the line, but just season 1, or, like, a good overall pitch that tries to do the justice to all of the miscellaneous plot threads going on, is a bail bondswoman, seemingly from our world, gets wrapped up in fairy tale quests after having it revealed to her that the beliefs she's held about her birth are a lie. And the fact that that is a terrible summary of what is actually going on, but also the closest you can get to a cohesive summary, is sort of the brilliance and the horror of this here television series.
This show is weird and beautiful and magical and also bad. It is an experience.
It's traumatizing.
It is a dumpster fire, but unfortunately for us,
bit.
it is our dumpster fire.
Oh, hey, I know that experience all too well.
Yeah, speaking of vaguely 2010 fantasy drama, but anyway, because that's the thing. One of the podcasts that I do love that I've mentioned before, I'm pretty sure, Escape from Vault Disney, did do one episode on one of the episodes we'll be talking about today. And while that was a fun episode, it was mostly peopled by people who had never seen the show, and while it was fun to listen to them make fun of it, I mentioned this in the chat, it's kind of like if you make fun of where you come from in some way, that's fine, but if you hear someone else making fun of it, a part of you kind of wants to kick their ass, because it's like, no, only I get to do that.
The other half of the Kane sibling effect.
I will throw hands. I get to make fun of Texas because fuck Texas. If you make fun of it and I don't know you, I will throw hands because you don't know jack shit.
You have not gone through this. Only we can make fun of it.
I was there when the Great Evil was written.
But anyway.
I believe we have episode summaries.
Yeah, that's basically what I decided we were going to have to do, because if we go episode by episode, it's going to be the Hadestown episode all over again.
No, it's going to be worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, worse. At least Hadestown is only 2 acts.
So I decided the smart thing to do would be to get all the summarizing out of the way in the most concise manner possible. So I am now challenging both myself and all of my guests here to summarize assigned episodes of this season in 1 minute each. Can we do it? I don't know, but we're gonna try.
I've got a stopwatch.
Okay, besties, your problem here is that you've just challenged a fucking debate kid who had to fucking give a 7-minute speech written in 90 seconds to speak really fucking fast in under a minute. Besties, you made the wrong challenge here today.
We're gonna do it. All right.
I am starting with the first 2 episodes. Let's do this! Just when Snow White and Prince Charming think they're about to have their happy ending, the evil queen threatens to curse them all to tear them from their loved ones and lands. Meanwhile, in the quote-unquote real world, we meet Emma Swan, bail bondswoman, who is about to celebrate her 28th birthday alone, but then her son comes back into her life, and she's trying to drive him home to Storybrooke, where he claims all these fairy tale characters have been cursed to forget who they really are, and that time has stopped all this time. His adoptive mom is the evil queen. His teacher is Snow White. Emma decides to stay because while she may not believe what Henry says, she does think Regina is shady as fuck. And then, thing you love the most, the evil queen Regina's had issues starting this curse because she needs to sacrifice the heart of the thing she loves the most, according to Rumpelstiltskin / Mr. Gold, and that turns out to be her daddy. So she had to cold-bloodedly murder her father. And she had the nerve to lay a rose on his grave after all that, even though he begged her to let it go. Meanwhile, Emma's kind of the talk of the town, and also Emma was tricked into calling Henry crazy for his theory about the fairy tales, but ends up being all, no, this is to help, quote-unquote, Operation Cobra, which is Henry's plan to break the curse. Okay,
episode 3, Snow Falls. In the enchanted forest, Snow robs Charming and hits him with a rock, giving him the scar that he has now, and they fight a group of trolls to get back Charming's mom's wedding ring. Back in Storybook, a comatose John Doe, aka Charming, is revived by Mary Margaret via CPR/True Let's Kiss. Before they can have a loving reunion, Regina brings in his wife, Catherine.
Episode 4, The Price of Gold. This is the Cinderella episode in which in which Rumpelstiltskin takes the place of Cinderella's fairy godmother and cracks a deal. Cinderella can still go to the ball and have her plot as normal, but the price is, of course, her firstborn child because, again, Rumpel's Fae. In the modern-day Storybrooke plotline, said woman is known as Ashley. She's been pregnant for 28 fucking years. The implications of it all. Dad of her prince in this universe still doesn't approve, so has convinced Gold to buy the baby off of her to send it to a foster home. Emma, who is wildly anti-foster care, for reasons that we will get into, managed to negotiate with Gold to allow Ashley to keep the baby once Ashley's decided to actually keep it. Gold argues for a favor to be fulfilled at a later date, season 2.
Episode 5, That Still Small Voice. If I had a nickel for every time Archie not having a backbone and needing to learn to trust his gut got an innocent kid hurt, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it shouldn't have happened twice. If I were Geppetto, I might have stepped on him by accident, but that's just me. I'm a petty asexual hoe that way. Pongo saves the day because he's the bestest boy.
Episode 6.
So, oops, we actually have 2 Charmings, except oops, no, because while the first Charming was showing off, he got McStabbed, and so Rumple has to take a second child from this poor woman, who is David, who was a shepherd, but now he has to go do the Prince and the Pauper thing and slay a dragon. Meanwhile, David, who's still trying to deal with the whole coma thing, he doesn't remember his supposed wife, but feels a strong connection to Mary Margaret, aka Snow White. But unfortunately, just when he's about to leave with his wife for her, he goes into Mr. Gold's pawn shop, and seeing a windmill stirs the fake memories that the curse gives him.
Episode 7. The Heart is a lonely hunter. In the Enchanted Forest, Regina has killed Snow White's father and has arranged for someone to dispose of her, the Huntsman. The Huntsman doesn't go through with it, and Regina takes his heart for the betrayal. Back in Storybrooke, Graham starts getting flashbacks of his wolf companion and is then freed from the curse after kissing Emma, but all for naught as Regina crushes his heart to death.
R.I.P. Graham. Episode 8, Desperate Souls. The origin story of how Rumple became the Dark One in a desperate bid to save his son from a war that he is too much of a coward to fight, as well as maybe sending children off to war is a general bad idea. But it was all a trick by the actual Dark One who told him the story to help him get out of the deal cast. In the modern day, Sydney Glass, aka the Enchanted Mirror, aka the Genie, don't worry, we'll get to it, and Emma are going up against Town Sheriff as the office is now up for grabs with Graham's death. Emma comes out on top by standing up to Gold, who sort of manipulated the whole thing to have it go her way. Gold's plans always end up working, even though they're absolutely convoluted as sin. Episode 9,
True North. In Fairy Tale Land, Hansel and Gretel learn why not talking to strangers is the lesson your parents drill into your head from the time you can walk and accidentally murder a blind witch. Fucking rude. In Storybrooke, Hansel and Gretel almost end up in foster care, but their dad's compass saves the day because he decides not to be a deadbeat dad after Emma does one of Emma Swan's trademark Emma Swan speeches.
7:15 a.m. So in Storybrooke, it turns out Mary Margaret and David keep on going to Granny's Diner at 7:15 a.m. with the sole purpose of seeing each other, even though David went back to Catherine, and even though Regina keeps on trying to keep them away from each other. And even though they tried to stay away from each other, they ended up kissing anyway because they ended up coming back at the same time because they will always find each other, even though this is one of the few episodes they don't say it in. Back in Storybook Land, Snow White tries to go back for Charming, but the king threatens his life if she causes him to break off the wedding to Abigail. And so Rumpelstiltskin gives Snow a potion to forget about her love for Charming, which she does end up drinking even after she is comforted by her new friends, the dwarves.
Episode 11, Fruit of the Poisonous Tree.
Emma and Sydney team up to expose Regina's true nature. Things backfire and Emma and Henry must stay apart for now, but it turns out that Sydney has been Regina's wall the entire time. Back in the Enchanted Forest, the genie, who's freed by King Leopold, falls for Regina and ends up killing King Leopold to free her. Regina reveals that she set him up, that the genie still wishes to be with her forever, leading him to be imprisoned in a mirror.
Episode 12, Skin Deep. Rumpelstiltskin once again takes the spot of one of the other fairy tale characters. In this case, he is the Beast from Beauty and the Beast. In a desperate attempt to have Belle's royal family and her small town saved from the ogre war that has been sort of percolating in the background, they call in Rumpelstiltskin, who agrees to stop the fighting on the condition that Belle becomes his housekeeper. Belle sort of agrees because she wants to be the hero for once in her goddamn life and doesn't really like Gaston, who she's been betrothed to anyway, so it's all well and good. Belle does the mistake. Belle makes the mistake of falling for Gold. It's a terrible decision and is manipulated it by Regina into telling him Rumpelstiltskin's still a fucking coward, all things considered, refuses to give up the power that the Dark One holds and casts her out of his house. Regina then tells him that she's been fucking dead. In modern day, joke's on all of y'all, Belle's being held in the basement of a sanatorium that this town, for some reason, has. Also, Gold goes to fucking town on this universe's version of Belle's father, leading well-known viewers to remember that, oh yeah, Gold allegedly remembers the past, because there's a failsafe, and he's learned since he learned Emma's name when she first came into town. Episode 13.
What happened to Frederick? In Fairy Tale Land, Abigail's true love got turned to gold by her dad Midas many years ago. When Frederick tried to save her dad from danger, James meets a siren to try to get the water to save Frederick and just barely manages to not fucking die. In Storybrooke, Catherine finds out Mary was cheating with her husband James and bitch slaps the shit out of her in front of God and everyone. No notes, to fuck around is human, to find out is arranged by the evil queen.
Episode 14.
Dreamy. So, for some reason, dwarves come out of eggs, but this is where we find out Grumpy's backstory. And it's actually pretty cute. At first, there's this little clumsy fairy named Nova that they kind of fall in love with, but dwarves aren't allowed to fall in love. And she's going to be a fairy godmother, so they can't be together. And that is how he becomes, instead of Dreamy, Grumpy, because for some reason the dwarves' names are assigned by their pickaxes. In the real world, Mary Margaret is desperately trying to win favor back with the town by selling candles for the nuns.
She's in a multi-level marketing scheme. Someone get her out.
Leroy, who is Grumpy in this world, falls for her sister Astrid and becomes determined to help Snow sell the candles because, oops, Astrid bought a whole bunch of helium tanks, and now they're not going to be able to make rent because Mr. Gold is basically the fucking mafia of this town. And by destroying an electric line, Leroy is able to sell all the candles. Hip hip hooray!
Episode 15!
Red-handed. Emma hires Ruby to be her assistant after Ruby quits working at Granny's diner. Meanwhile, in the Enchanted Forest, a murderous wolf is wreaking havoc in Red Riding Hood's village, and Red and Snow, thinking that Red's boyfriend Peter is the wolf, plan to keep him chained until he turns human again. Only Red has been the wolf the entire time. Back in Storybrooke, Ruby is horrified about what she finds, a box with Catherine's heart, and Mary Margaret's fingerprints are on the lid.
Episode 16, The Heart of Darkness, because somehow I ended up with all the goddamn gold episodes. Mary Margaret is in prison and is trying to cope with the fact that she is stuck in place and hires Gold as her attorney, which can only go so well. In flashback time, Snow is trying to cope with the whole process of maybe taking a potion and forgetting Charming because all of it just hurts all too goddamn much. Gold agrees. For a straight of her hair, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Also, I'm using Gold and Rumpelstiltskin interchangeably. It's fucking the same goddamn guy. Don't worry about it.
Episode 17. Hat trick! The Callie special has arrived! Goth, a loving father, a bonus jazz treat, and he's a little crazy. Bucky Jefferson kidnaps Mary and Emma to try and save his daughter in Storybrooke. He tries to get Emma to make a hat when she has never done that ever and has no magic. In Wonderland, Jefferson makes a deal with Regina. Bad fucking idea, dumbass. And Regina obviously betrays him. He becomes the Mad Hatter because he has to make another hat to get out of Wonderland. This does not end well.
Episode 18. In the home stretch, besties.
We're almost there, guys. The Stable Boy. We finally learned Regina's tragic backstory, and it is, for all intents and purposes, pretty tragic. Her mother's an abusive bitch, tried to force her to marry a man like maybe 3 times her age because she rescued the Princess Snow White from a runaway horse. And she's in love with her family's stable boy, Daniel. They try to run away together so she doesn't have to marry King Leopold, but oops, Snow White kind of spills the beans because Cora is a manipulative bitch. And because Regina needs therapy very badly, decides to blame her, wishing she had let her die on that horse. Meanwhile, in the real world, Regina is, of course, delighted that Mary Margaret is probably gonna be found guilty of Catherine's murder because of the evidence piling up.
Episode 19!
The Return. In the Enchanted Forest, Balefire, Rumpelstiltskin's son, finds a way to remove Rumpel's power, but the latter's cowardice leads to Balefire falling into a world without magic. Meanwhile, Gold attempts to discover the true identity of August, who he thinks may be his lost son. Spoiler alert, he's not, but he is another resident of the Enchanted Forest. Meanwhile, Rumpel, desperate to get his son back, has gotten a clue on how to go about it, unleashing a dark curse.
Episode 20, The Stranger. Again, I keep ending up with Rumpel-focused episodes, but kind of not really. Anyway, finally an explanation as to what August's whole cryptic deal is. In spite of the fact that he is an enigma wrapped in a typewriter, wrapped in some stubble, August is actually Pinocchio, who was sent through the portal before Emma, on behest of Geppetto, who was desperate to save his son because of the whole, what would a father do to save his own son? Sort of a dark parallel to whatever the hell Rumpel and Balefire have got going on. Pinocchio did his best in the modern day to try to protect baby Emma, but when, being a child under the rules of Fey logic, gets offered the opportunity to bail out of a terrible foster care situation, leaves Emma behind, thus leaving her to suffer within the walls of the system. We get back to him later and what his whole deal actually is. In the modern day, Regina is trying to get around the idea that maybe, just maybe, she can, love people. No, it doesn't work. It's bad and horrible and awful, and bad and horrible and awful. August is also slowly dying, no big deal, don't worry about it. Also, he's trying to convince Emma that she is indeed the savior, but Emma refuses to believe because, like, God, this woman had a normal life a couple of months ago, and now everything is suddenly being upended, and people keep telling her crazy things. And honestly, I don't blame her. Episode 21. Let's get this shit.
Episode 21. An apple as red as blood. An apple as red as blood. Evil Queen trades James from the king to Shriek Snow. The poisoned apple finally makes a goddamned appearance. And Gold taunts Regina because her tree is dying and the curse is probably fading away. Henry eats the turnover that was supposed to put Emma under the sleeping curse, which puts him under the sleeping curse. And Whale is a fucking useless doctor per usual.
And finally, a land without magic. Henry is rushed to the hospital after the sleeping curse, and it turns out all Emma had to do to find out that Henry has been right this whole time was touch the fucking book. She almost damn near kills Regina because now she knows, yeah, Regina was in fact trying to kill her, and now Henry is suffering for it. Emma ends up fighting Maleficent Dragon in order to try to save Henry, but that doesn't end up working. But you know what does? Maternal true love's kiss. And of course, it makes it all come back to the resonance of Storybrooke. You practically expect Celine Dion to be singing in the background.
Also, by the way, Jefferson, pissed off that Regina has unintentionally screwed him over once again, says, "Fuck you, I'm done playing by your rules," releases Belle from her captivity, sends her to Gold with the very message that, hey, Regina put her in this situation, and Gold says, ha ha ha, I'm gonna beat all of your problems, and brings magic to this world, upending the final title. But that problem is for season 2, baby! Now we get to talk about the actual goddamn fun stuff, aka this interconnected web of nonsense.
Yes. But it's our nonsense, damn it. Everybody got that?
We will not be doing it again!
You can rewind. That's what podcasts are for.
But yeah, I can't imagine how a season 1 like this could have ended with an absolute goddamn mess of a TV show.
It's like I said, the show, like, at its core, has like 16 episodes worth of plot. But because we gotta fill a 2010s television schedule with 22 episodes, we gotta do a lot of fluff and filler, which, like, is a blessing and a curse. Because let's face it, none of us remember this show because the plots were very good. They just went batshit. We remember these stories and this show because of its characters and its dynamics and this complicated mess of a web that it has spun for us, this yarn that it has created. And man,
it's what Mr. Gold is thinking of while he's spinning that wheel and trying to forget all of his trauma.
There is a reason why the wheel appears.
Man, I miss when shows had, like, character building. Even if it doesn't go anywhere in later seasons. I miss when shows had character building.
I miss filler episodes.
Yeah, filler episodes, I will admit, those are fun. Like,
and sometimes filler episodes are there for a reprieve. You see all the drama and the trauma.
This show was almost kind of the last dying cry of an era. We didn't even know it at the time, but it was.
It's really interesting because in Skin Deep, the mini pun gag that I latched onto is the fact that Mo French's business is called Game of Thorns. And Game of Thrones came out a year after this show. And yet they feel like two completely different eras of television, even though they were airing basically concurrent. And so, like, while Game of Thrones feels like the omen of the streaming boom to come, Once Upon a Time is sort of the last gasp of, like, 90s to early aughts wackadoo sci-fi fantasy television.
Where it was still allowed to be cheesy.
Yeah, and, you know, filmed with a shoestring budget of some strips of bubblegum and a piece of duct tape. But let's get into some of the thematics of the adaptations, some of the vibes, some of the nitpicks, and some of the various energies.
What we decided we were going to do, instead of breaking this down episode by episode and being here all goddamn day, we're going to break it down storyline by storyline, fairy tale by fairy tale, because at the end of the day, that is the main goal of this podcast.
All right, Hansel and Gretel are the show's requirement to tick the box.
And, you know, it's a solid adaptation of Hansel and Gretel, in my humble opinion. I mean, we have Emma Caulfield as the gingerbread witch, or the blind witch in this case, which I had forgotten, and I was
absolutely delighted. Like, it's a small part, but she kills it, I think. It's a very Emma Caulfield performance.
She does, in fact, kill it. She does, in fact, kill it.
No, actually.
She kills it so much that she lights the whole oven on fire.
Like, the episode itself is very much that we've got 60 episodes worth of plot, but we've got to fill 22 episodes of television. It is very much, we don't know if we're getting a second season yet, so we're gonna tick as many boxes as we can get, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I think that it's an interesting adaptation.
What I do find interesting about this episode, actually, is when you think about the original Hansel and Gretel fairy tale, it literally is about child abandonment and the consequences therein. Very, you're on your own, kid. You always have been. While this version of it is explicitly about how, no, their father did not in fact mean to abandon them. This was all Regina doing her evil queen thing. The curse made him want to do the fairy tale thing, but eventually with Emma's big speech, as Callie said, the Emma Swan protagonist speech, if you will, also known as a Jeff Winger. She does a lot of those. He does end up taking responsibility.
She had to get something from David. Let's face it, she's Snow's child. She had to get something from David. She got his hair. The thing about the Hansel and Gretel episode is it's the most egregious, but it's the second time it's been brought up. Emma has foster care trauma, which, dear viewers, does not go anywhere, really, the further we get on into the series.
Which, if you're gonna beat me over the head that hard with something, can you at least make it interesting and fun?
Yeah, it's sort of a background radiation by season 2 and 3, where it's very much like part of Snow and Emma's whole ordeal going into season 2, which I have complaints about, but that's fine. But it also, like, ties into sort of her relation to both Neil and with August. Something shared collective orphans from this here shenaniganery and being sent to this time, because, you know, every single kid that got sent here winds up an orphan. And
yes, sorrows, prayers.
And each one of them sort of coped with it and, like, dealt with it differently. Like, August, it's implied, he sort of aged out of the system. I don't think August was ever adopted. August aged out of the system and sort of fucked around and found out and, you know, was held to the standard of Fae logic and thus is punished for actions he could not have really accounted for because, hey, Fae definitions of good are kind of impossible in this complex, no ethical consumption under anything. Meanwhile, Neil got lucky and was adopted by the Darlings and then got sent to Neverland for a couple hundred years and then ended up back in our world and started committing crime. That's season 2's problem, but it's very important to me that you know that now.
King.
Meanwhile, Emma got bounced forwards, backwards, and sideways and also had to start turning to crime where she eventually deals with. That's season 2. Anyway, the point is that this sort of damage, I hate calling it that, but it's technically what it is. This character development problem, this anchoring in Emma's past that is going to inform her characterization going forward is very important in this season to explain why she has the coping mechanisms that she does, like, to the point where Mary Margaret points out that she is regressing by the end of season, I should say. Which, like, yeah, bestie, coping mechanisms die hard, especially unhealthy ones. Ask me how I know. But it's important, it's just very weird. Like, this show is so mean-spirited about foster systems. And I understand that they have institutional flaws because everything has institutional flaws in this here hellscape of a world.
It's almost like that's why Regina sent them there.
But, like, this feels like an after-school specials interpretation. This feels very, like, the writers have never actually talked to somebody who has been through the system and instead wrote based on tropes, and that is ultimately for the worse.
You know, that's actually a really fair point. Like, the after-school special comparison is also really astute, actually. Like, I do have a fondness for the Hansel and Gretel episode, but especially the Storybrooke parts where it's, again, she basically speechifies about how, no, it's your responsibility to be a parent to these kids now that you know that they are your kids, and that he does end up doing it. It's like, man, if only it was that easy. But on the other hand, it did kind of make me realize that maybe this show could have stood to have more of like an anthology kind of vibe to it, where we got to see more of how Emma is really impacting the town in good ways.
I think this show wants to have its cake and eat it too. Because a lot of times it'll introduce characters and then promptly forget about them. Sometimes that is due to actors having busy schedules. For example, Megan Ory, I believe, got hired to something else. The Wales actor was bouncing between this, iZombie, and The Vampire Diaries. Sebastian Stan got hired by the MCU and it was game over. So, he basically had to get forcibly written out. Giancarlo Esposito basically had to get forcibly written out. Shout out to that moment in the last episode where you just see Sidney Glass's nameplate implying that he is also hiding in the sanatorium in the basement of the Storybrooke Hospital that for some reason Storybrooke has. Yeah, that's how they wrote out Sidney Glass, in case you didn't notice.
I mean, yeah, he was blamed for the murder. We'll get in. Well,
yeah.
For the abduction, not the murder, the abduction.
Yeah, some of the things that the show writers had to do, like, they were in an unenviable position where they had to write out characters they wanted to maybe use as more of an anchor going forward, but for reasons that, scheduling conflicts occurred. I want to say, like, the anthology series might have been better in the long run, but I think it would have been difficult to do, given the everything.
Yeah, unfortunately. Like, I wish there was a way to find a happy medium, because I do like the idea of, like, the connected universe and the lore and the crossovers in theory. It's just unfortunate that there's really no winning there. Structurally, I don't know if there was a way that this show wouldn't have ended up getting too crazy.
Out of this OG season 1 cast, I think I can count on the number of, like 1.5 hands how many characters actually mattering by the end of season 3.
Damn.
Because the cast goes through so many major shifts and so many things where you're like, they clearly wanted to do something there, but then got, like, shafted elsewhere.
That episode had the least impact for me because, well, it only just introduced Emma's trauma, but it didn't really go far with it. Like, it's not really touched upon in other episodes as deeply as it does with this one. Well,
like I said, it's sort of the obligatory, we may only get one season, let's see how many boxes we can tick episode.
And you can't not do a Hansel and Gretel episode if you're going to do a fairy tale series.
And that's all it needed to be. Like, we're not dinging it for that fact.
Yeah, no, it's a solid Hansel and Gretel retelling, even if you're not wrong about the whole after-school special vibes to the Storybrooke
I was
aspect.
bored. Like, I was like, yep, it's Hansel and Gretel. Don't talk to strangers. Don't eat the candy. We have done.
Yeah, but it also places a lot of the blame on the curse and Regina by extension. Like, in the original fairy tale, it was all like the dad was so passive that he agreed to let the mom abandon them. Like, he didn't really do anything. And that in action, I felt like they could have done something with that in this episode.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. They kind of ended up subverting that because, no, this was a father that did want to be there for them. Which, like, I don't know. Like, I think that's interesting.
If I had a nickel for every time Regina was forced a father who really wanted to be there for his kids to abandon them due to her own selfish wants and desires, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it is weird that it happened twice.
3, actually, because, I mean, Charming and Emma, and I think we kind of cracked the case on why they made that adaptational choice in the first place. Hansel and Gretel are meant to be foils of Emma, so it's really important, actually, that their father did not, in fact, abandon them. If Emma was a little more genre-savvy, she might have recognized the foreshadowing.
We don't even get to see the Cinderella story!
We don't!
That is the most criminal part!
Like, we don't even get to see the ball! Like, that's the one
thing
you do!
No, we don't, yeah!
To do.
Yeah, the ball is the wedding!
Yeah.
And Rumple's like, surprise, bitch!
Because Rumpelstiltskin's gotta ruin everything.
It's the one time Rumpelstiltskin gets to actually be kind of a fae.
It's the one time he actually gets to kind of do his Rumpelstiltskin thing, even though, I will say this again, it is fucking weird that a character, the whole point of the story is that we do not know his name until the very end, pretty much says his name every fucking episode.
As I remember from the time, the amount of edits that are just like Rumple introducing himself with his silly ass bow.
I mean, I love it.
It's a non-zero amount of times. You could have just kept with calling him the Dark One and had that be the workaround. But I guess it's a little wordy, all things considered. Plus, like, calling people by their titles is a lot. The fairy godmother we do get a brief glimpse of does actually fuck. I do like her design.
I love her design, and it's one of many women of color who get like 5 seconds and then nope,
brutally murdered.
Yeah.
Yes, unfortunately that happens a lot.
It is less egregious in this season because there aren't that many people of color in this season.
Which makes it
but
worse.
We only get the evil queen and the magic mirror.
Yeah. But it gets more egregious.
Yeah, the magic mirror is.
Also, like,
it gets more egregious as the seasons goes on.
They were so clearly basing that fairy godmother look off the Brandy Cinderella. Changed my mind. You can't.
It does.
It does invoke Whitney Houston's ghost a little bit there, yeah.
don't think she was a ghost yet.
She wasn't. She wasn't. She was.
Okay.
She wasn't,
The
but
point remains.
Again, yeah, we really don't get most of the Cinderella thing. The Cinderella thing is mostly
In name only.
a Rumpelstiltskin story. It's mostly a Rumpelstiltskin story, actually.
That's literally what it is. He usurps so many of the roles. He literally inserts himself into the story.
Again,
It's like, God damn it.
Again, Rumpelstiltskin is a yandere.
That is a cursed thought.
It's a cursed thought, but it's not incorrect.
Yeah, they're right. They are right, unfortunately.
But yeah, the Cinderella also feels like we're just trying to tick off the box to count it, but, you know.
Yeah. What do we think of the whole pregnancy storyline, though?
That falls into the implications
That
of it
is
all.
hell.
Which also leads into, like, Henry has been surrounded by children who haven't aged.
Well, not had
28 years.
10 years. 10 years. Still not great, though.
Oh, God.
No, but the rest of the children.
Yeah.
Implying that Paige was brought over when this whole curse began. Paige has been 10, 11, because she's the same age as Henry, for 28 years.
No.
The children have not aged.
Oh, God. They're mental ages.
No, because here's the thing, it kind of
Everyone
is the weird thing about Storybrooke is that
Goodbye.
supposedly time hasn't moved, supposedly. It's supposedly like a Groundhog Day situation.
Time hasn't moved.
Like, they never really developed that well until later seasons. You can see how compelling this Cinderella episode is,
Yeah.
I guess.
Which is a shame, because Cinderella, you can do some really dumb shit with Cinderella.
You can do so much with, like, Cinderella's kind of the fairy tale to do for this sort of thing.
Alright, next is either Red or Alice. I guess we gotta do Alice.
Sure. I mean, the thing is, it's not really an Alice story, it is a Mad Hatter or origin story.
Yeah.
Right, but we go to Wonderland.
Oh,
so I like the fact that Wonderland is kind of a CGI nightmare. It looks bad because it's 2010 and this show doesn't have a budget. God, imagine the show with a budget. This show's budget went solely into its costuming.
Oh, absolutely. And casting.
And that's money well spent. But, like, considering the Enchanted Forest is very much, grounded realism, we are filming in the woods in BC, and everything is sort of, really, really practical except for some of the interiors of the castles, which, reasonable. BC is known for a lot of things, it does not have a lot of castles. And, the ABC doesn't have the budget to go fly out to Scotland for some reason. But as a stark contrast, the idea of delineating worlds, I do like the idea of Wonderland, this sort of running on nonsense, running on surreality. Wonderland being a CGI nightmare actually kind of tonally fits.
For sure, but on the other hand, it's not a good sign when Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland looks better than your Wonderland.
Right, but again, this show has no budget.
No budget, yeah. But fortunately, it doesn't matter that Wonderland looks like a PS2 game, because we've got Jefferson.
Jefferson, my beloved. Shout out to Sebastian Stan. Don't think I've ever seen that bitch in a project where I didn't love him immediately.
Yeah.
Love his wardrobe.
He was perfect. No,
Yeah.
flaws.
Yeah.
King, love him. My
Yeah,
perfect, my beloved.
That is steampunk.
Oh my
That is
god, it was
steampunk inspired, and we love to see it.
And it makes sense as the world traveler that his aesthetic and his fits do not work with what we've established that, like, the Enchanted Forest's costuming is, or what Wonderland's costuming eventually is. Like, it makes sense that his looks sort of the most like Wales world when we see it in season 2. The idea that he's sort of borrowing clothing from each of the worlds he visits is an interesting idea, and I'm kind of obsessed with it, actually. Shout out to Sebastian Stan. Wish he'd been allowed to have been in more episodes, but unfortunately the MCU devoured your time, and we are all better for it.
Also, I find it interesting that, like, the Mad Hatter is characterized by his madness in the original story, but here, Jefferson's madness stems from him having, his memories of the Enchanted Forest.
Yes, which is very cool. I like that idea. And also from the whole losing his head situation.
And
I also think that's cool.
It's a good way to do madness TM without having to poke the mental illness of it all.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, like, he kept having to make hats that weren't working to see his daughter.
Yeah,
That would drive anyone to the brink of madness.
his madness is a combination of
And
grief and desperation and being a stranger in a strange land and curse bullshit, which is a good way to interpret the madness without having to open the cardboard box labeled mental illness allegories.
Yeah.
The ghost we don't want to invoke because we are smarter and it's 2010, we should know better.
We'll get back to things they should have known better than to do later.
Listen, we're not talking about Graham yet. We're not talking about Graham yet. I can't make this podcast an abyss of tone yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, shout out to Jefferson. I love his appearance in season 2 as well. He doesn't have enough guyliner in this one. He does have a lot of guyliner in his season 2 appearance, where he is the king of making facial expressions in the background.
Yay.
Good use of your Sebastian stan.
He's so
Yeah,
perfect.
possibly my favorite. Like, there were a lot of,
He's so
like, sexy
pretty.
attempts at sexy hatters around this era.
Only one accomplished it. That door slam.
Yep, because the other sexy hatters were really over the top with their design, but this one is like simplistic, but it's like patched together, and I feel that fits with Hatter.
I will give a shout out to Andrew Lee Potts in the Sci-Fi Alice.
Yes, yeah, that one was a good one.
He was a solid one too.
Also, I love the hat portal.
Yes!
I love how the hat portal's designed.
It's such a cool idea.
Fun fact, that hat portal design also inspired at least 2 works of high school art from me.
Nice.
Nice.
I actually did a piece of art based around the hat portal. It's such a cool design. And it also is one of the 2 MacGuffins that gets set up in this season that we actually get to pay off next season.
Yay!
I will probably address more of this when we talk about Rumple and the other characters. But say what you want about some of the stuff that gets done in the season. Season 1, the back half of season 1, does a lot of good things to start planting the mysteries and MacGuffins that are rewarding to think about when you actually go back and watch it and get the context from going into season 2. Even though I don't think they knew what they were doing with the what was so interesting about Tallahassee line, that gets paid off really well in season 2.
You know, you don't always have to know what you're hinting at when you drop the hint. You just need to pay it off well.
Yeah, but like in the back half of season 2, you get the sense that they had gotten the confirmation that yes, they are going forward. So they start doing the planting of the magic bean, of Balefire being in our world, of the hat portals, and the fact that there's only one really working and it has to eat the magic to work again. You know, the breaking of the curse and what's going to happen afterwards, and the idea that Regina should probably go fucking hide. By the back half of season 2, they've gotten their confirmation they're going forward, and they've actually started working towards planning out what season 2 is going to be, and that's good. Even if they didn't have the grand total of what season 2 is going to be, they have the inkling starting to go forward. All right, that's Hatter.
Yep, we like him a lot.
Red.
Another one I really like.
Red got shortchanged by the fact that the actress was doing other things.
Oh, absolutely. But, like, they had a solid story for her here. Actually, funny thing is, on Twitter not that long ago, somebody was just like, wait, was Once Upon a Time the first time they came up with the idea that Red Riding Hood is a werewolf? And I was able to say, no, thankfully not. That was in the Bloody Chamber, which led to In the Company of Wolves.
Red's werewolf stuff doesn't get paid off until, again, season 2. But it is well set up here, and it's an interesting integration of Peter and the Wolf and the general wolf mythos of it all, TM, as well as being a very strange allegory for sex ed.
Yes. Once again, this is a tale of how just give your kids sex ed already, because it's gonna end badly if you don't.
And I thought Granny kind of just like trying so hard, like, yeah, we know we have this curse of the family and I'm gonna protect you, but I'm also not gonna tell you because I don't want you to be burdened with the knowledge of the family curse. Like, good intentions, very bad execution.
But it makes me think that whatever she was doing with Ruby was her trying to fix any mistakes that she made with her own daughter.
Yeah, exactly. Shami and I talked about this. Like, we have a theory that perhaps with Ruby's mom, she was too hard on her about the whole werewolf thing. So she was just like, okay, we clearly can't do that again. And unfortunately kind of overcorrected. And poor Peter had to pay for it.
Poor Peter.
Yeah, it also brings me to one of my other complaints that gets lost after season 1. No one in this show has friends. After season 1, no one in this show has friends.
They don't.
Because in this, you get the girl squad of Ruby, Ash, and Mary Margaret.
And Emma,
that's
of course.
cute. And Emma. But, like, you know, in the girls' night episode, you get Ash, Ruby, and Mary Margaret. And they never hang out again. And that's a shame.
Yeah.
And, like, Ruby is Snow's friend in the Enchanted Forest, but you never get to get that sense after that because, you know, Megan Ori had, you know, other things she had to do, and she wasn't able
Which is a shame. It's like the best friendship in the Enchanted Forest, bar none.
And it also, this is probably going to come up again more in season 2 and season 3, but like I'm just going to touch on it now. It also means that Emma and Mary Margaret's dynamic gets brutalized. And they have the best dynamic in the show because I miss them being friends. And they never get to be friends after season 1.
Which, I mean, understandable, but also,
Yeah, but then it also leads into, again, Emma is not allowed to have friends after season 1. She has her parents, her son, and her son's step co-parent situation, and any guy who is trying to flirt with her that week. Emma's not allowed friends, and I think that bitch deserves one. Just one.
Yeah, because Emma unfortunately has chemistry with everyone.
Yeah, but like it's very much like the one flaw with having an ensemble show like this is showrunners tend to prioritize ship dynamics, or they prioritize familial dynamics,
especially on this show,
and sort of forget the characters need friends too. Like,
Granny's a badass bitch?
Well, yeah, but I mean, in a lot of adaptations, Granny's a badass bitch. Like, that's just kind of been the accepted thing ever since Into the Woods.
Yeah, but it's still cool to see. Like, it's one of the better versions of badass bitchery that I personally have seen.
Yeah, but it's also implied that there's trauma related to her turning.
And
it's pretty much implied that she was assaulted by Red's grandfather.
I will say making Ruby a werewolf does strain this show's budget. 9 times out of 10 when she shifts into wolf, it is a cutaway and you just hear the noise.
Yeah.
Which is a shame.
I will say that one shot where her eyes turn gold as she's about to
go at it
on the King's Guards. Yes, that's a very good shot. Yes. I like that shot. As a monster lover and a woman enjoyer, yes, correct. Please.
I thought what was interesting about Granny was when they were looking for Red and Peter, Granny was like, I can smell her. Everything else has faded, but I've retained my sense of smell. Implying that the lycanthropy kind of decreases over time.
Here's the thing, the lycanthropy is blatantly a puberty metaphor, just as it often is, at least since Ginger snaps, if not soon.
Granny's in menopause then!
Exactly, Granny went through menopause and now she doesn't turn into a wolf anymore.
I just thought it was interesting that they actually addressed it.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for it to be a metaphor for puberty, so yeah, naturally it going down once they get older, which I'll admit you don't see a lot of elder werewolves in media, so yeah, you are right, that is unique.
Elder werewolves fall into the category of what is an old man doing in a young man's game. Like, very much, if an older werewolf shows up in a story, everyone is like, oh god, what have you done?
Meanwhile, Granny's like, fuck around, find out, bitch!
Because elder werewolves implies that you have done some shady-ass, fucked-up shit to survive, to live long enough to get gray in your muzzle. But that is a different podcast rant.
Or, in this case, they figured out, if I put this piece of cloth on me, I won't turn.
Yeah, it's enchanted. It's fine.
It's enchanted. It's magic.
It's magic.
We don't have to explain it.
We don't have magic rules yet, which is partially to the show's benefit, partially to the show's detriment.
Other than that, it always comes with a price.
Well!
We'll get to that. Yeah, I know. I had to.
Magic is not yet an addiction metaphor, but it's definitely starting to show the colors of being an addiction metaphor.
Which,
yeah.
Damn you, Whedon.
We're doing the back half of the Pinocchio story, but also the far forward of the Pinocchio story. That's the thing. This show does not do a lot of the, core retellings except for Snow and Charming, because it's a property of the Disney company, and it assumes you, dear ABC viewer of 2010, have at least a passing familiarity with at least the Disney versions of these stories. So it doesn't do, when we pick up the Pinocchio story, we are already about to be swallowed by a whale. We are doing the self-sacrifice, we are doing the you get to become a real boy thing. We don't do the having to get turned, through life. We don't get to do the I have no strings moment, We
don't get the donkey moment.
I mean, with this show's budget, thank God.
This show assumes that you, dear Disney viewer, have heard When You Wish Upon a Star at least 3 times in your life, if not using it as your own national anthem. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. Look me dead in my eyes and tell me I'm wrong.
I worked at Disney World.
I don't rewatch Once Upon a Studio a bunch for that ending song. No.
Exactly. So, what this show ends up doing is it does a lot of the, like, you already know how the story has gone, let's pick up from the stuff that happens after Happily Ever After.
But also some backstory for Geppetto and Jiminy.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we need to address that too.
Okay, so the Jiminy and Geppetto thing. Can I open my abusive parents box now?
Yes. Jiminy's parents are the worst.
You can.
Strap in.
Fucking open the box.
No. It's not just Jiminy. I have a box. And it's a half-cocked, half-developed argument that I want to talk about. And I want to talk about abusive parents in the context of Gold, Regina, and Hopper, and how each of them react to their abuse, as well as what they take into their relations with specifically Henry, but in general with children going forward. What we do know about Rumple in this first season, Rumple's wife has left him, or is dead, but has left him, and he is the sole father of a son named Balefire, and he's a coward. Rumple is a coward. That is his defining character trait prior to becoming the Dark One. And even after becoming the Dark One, he's still a bit of a coward, it's just flavored with magic. Rumple's an abusive parent, period, end of sentence. It's not physical, but it is definitely emotional. And it's sort of in that backhanded way where you don't really notice until you start thinking about it. And it is mostly comes out of a lot of Rumple's desire for control. And that is a thing that I think a lot of the abusive parents on this show is that it's never physical. None of the abusive parents that I'm going to be talking about for the sake of this are physically abusive. At least in this first season.
Except maybe Cora. Cora, I would argue.
Cora bends the line a little, but Cora's the exception to a lot of rules. We're getting there. We're getting there. I've got a thesis here. Rumple is never physically abusive to Balefire, but Rumple cannot not have control over a situation. It is part of what determines his cowardice. It is what mostly sends his wife away in the long run. His wife also probably has other issues with him, but there are always like little streaks of the man that Rumple is going to become even before becoming the Dark One. In what few scenes we get of Rumple prior to him becoming the Dark One, there are streaks of the man that Rumple will become, and Rumple's underlying problem is that he can't relinquish control to save his life. Because relinquishing control would mean having to submit to his worst impulses, which is the fact that he is a goddamn fucking coward. How that affects Balefire is alienation. It eventually results in Bale going to the Blue Fairy and being like, I need a way to save me and my father because I think this magic is corrupting the both of us. And he's right, of course, because it's dark magic and all magic comes with a price. The point is that Rumple makes this deal. Rumple thinks that he can quit. He can quit being the Dark One and he can go with the Land Without Magic, but that would mean relinquishing control. And his power is his method of controlling a situation. And he cannot do that even if it means Bale's life and his happiness. And while he regrets this decision, allegedly, I don't believe his sincerity. Not because Robert Carlyle is a bad actor, but because these writers never decided what the fuck they wanted to do with Rumple, and hot take, he should have stayed dead after season 3. It's sort of, that is Rumple's problem. Rumple's problem is that he needs to have control, and that is how he is an abusive parent.
And it's really telling that he plants the Dark One knife into the ground to stop Balefire from dragging him off into the portal. Like, that is, like...
Yes, that is...
Solid visual metaphor.
Yeah.
That is the visual metaphor of he cannot relinquish control of power.
When we meet Rumple, Gold, whatever you want to fucking call him, it doesn't fucking matter. When we meet Rumple, they're in the middle of the Ogre War. They're recruiting literal children for this war. Now, I come from a 3-generation military family. My grandfather served in World War II and World War I. My father almost served in the Gulf War. And I have cousins who were in the Army and the Marines, and I possibly have been to Iraq. I don't keep in touch with them enough to confirm or deny that they did or did not serve in the current war of the 21st century. But I do know my father almost went to the Gulf War in the 90s. And it was like 48 hours notice that he was not going to go. My father was like, do not join the military. For the love of fuck, do not join the military. I was going to possibly do it anyway, but he was like, don't fucking do it. That's a dumb idea, bitch. Like, not wanting your children to fight in a war and not join the military is not cowardice. Not wanting to fight in a war is not cowardice. Like,
honestly, nicest thing your father ever did for you.
Yeah, very few things he did for me, but...
So I don't frame it as cowardice, but that is how the show frames it, because the show exists in a world of chivalric knights. The show exists in fairy tale logic. Fairy tale logic states that the brave thing to do would be to go and fight and be the knight and be David. The show has fairy tale logic. It's like child logic, but weirder.
Because just like, The idea of, like, him not wanting his kids dead and not wanting to die himself, like...
You know the kind of people we have here, Callie. We are distinctly anti-war in general, but especially anti-child soldier.
No, yeah, I'm just, like, making a point, like...
But even then, that falls under, like, even if it's a good intention, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Oh, absolutely.
There are still streaks of the man that Rumple will become. It is less not wanting Bae to fight out of fatherly love. It is not wanting Bae to fight because that would leave Rumple alone. Rumple lives in a world of chivalric knights. Wanting to not fight in a war is against the rules of chivalric knights. Therefore, if so quo, cowardice. Part 2, Cora. She's the complicated one. Cora is emotionally, physically abusive, and it results in Regina falling into said cycles of abuse. Because Neil does not get to parent Henry long enough to see whether or not he would have been an abusive parent figure. We're going to lean on the side of no, because he had enough time with the Darlings to suggest that maybe some of those habits could have potentially been broken. Cora's whole thing is power. All of the abusive parents in these situations want power and control and the ability to keep it. Cora's thing specifically is power. She is a poor mother's daughter trying to move up in the world, and it goes badly for her. She ends up fucking, please stop being horny for gold, but everyone in this fucking bundle of the family is horny for gold. What is it?
Cora is just fucking,
Cora, as we meet her in this show, is
the worst.
Is already moving up in the world, she's like a stage mom. She's like the worst version of a stage mom.
I can give you something worse than a stage mom.
She's a pageant mom is what she is.
That too, but she's also the Christian youth mom.
Ooh. She's like the horrible, unholy combo of all of those things. They
usually coexist in some way, shape, or form.
Correct. So I can't actually talk a lot about Cora because a lot of Cora's worst instincts comes out in season 2.
I mean, she still rips a man's heart out because she doesn't want her kid to not be queen, so...
Yeah, that, again, she's kind of a fucked up mess, and it leads Regina to having a lot of fucked up implications and coping mechanisms and lack thereof, and also becoming... So Henry also has issues as sort of the doormat parent to both his wife and his daughter, and the cycles therein. But Regina reacts to all of this by perpetuating the cycle.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
That is what causes Henry's whole thing to be the way it is. That is what leads Henry to stealing a credit card and bailing his way to Boston to get Emma into the picture. Had Regina done some damn introspection, she would have realized that she is copying Cora's parenting methods and would have considered things. But she can't relinquish power, control, or grudges for a fucking minute to sort of allow for any of that to be a thing.
Yeah.
Again, I can't talk a lot about this because a lot of this happens into season 2 and into season 3 and echoes out, and how Regina does actually try to do some introspection in season 2 and the writers won't fucking let her.
because I will admit, because I am a big fan of Regina, and I love Lana Parrilla. She does a great job with her. But rewatching the season made me realize, my God, you really are such a petulant child for so much of it. But of course she is with a mother like that.
Yeah, season 1 Regina is a lot of, shall we say, a mess. She's a fucking mess. Every time you think she is going to, maybe consider the error of her ways, no, incorrect. Regina do some damn introspection, and she ends up coming out with the wrong goddamn message. Mm-hmm. And it's never going to be as atrocious until you get into the later seasons. Because again, the later seasons is when this starts to ripple effect out, and the problems it continues to have as the ripple effects go out. But it is worth bringing up here in the cycles therein, and also Cool Motive Still Murder.
Yeah, basically.
Just a very mild, low-level hum of Cool Motive Still Murder. Again, all of Snow's domino problems, all of this starts because a 10-year-old made a mistake. A 10-year-old made the mistake of getting gaslit by a woman known to be a manipulative bitch.
Yeah.
And had Regina maybe just stopped and thought some things through and not been controlled solely by an ego, we wouldn't be in this fucking mess.
I mean, the worst thing is, when you look at that episode, she could have lost it right as soon as she knew. But she knew already. It's like, yeah, I can't do that. I can't actually lash out at this child yet.
It's not your fault, darling.
And she even almost comes off as if she recognizes, no, it's not actually her fault. But on the other hand, I should have let her die on that horse. Because it's easier to blame Snow than it is the
the person who has actual power over
blame
her.
the child rather than because at this point Regina literally has no power over Cora.
It is always going to be easier to blame somebody who has less power in the situation than it is to blame the person who has the power.
The heart vault's Cora's. She inherited it from Cora.
Yeah.
The heart vault and pulling hearts out, that's Cora to Regina.
God.
It doesn't get addressed this
Collecting
season.
your jar of hearts, tearing
Well, I
them
felt
apart,
like-
man.
It felt weird not talking about the goddamn heart vault.
Yeah.
Archie. Archie is the example of breaking the cycles. All Archie wants is freedom. He wants to not live under the thumb of his emotionally abusive and manipulative parents. Does he do it with absolutely horrific consequences? Yes! God, what the fuck?
Yeah,
What the fuck?
you know,
What the fuck episode?
I like the idea of this episode about how, you know, he had a childhood where he was not allowed to do the right thing, even though he wanted to. And his initial attempts at trying to escape it ended up severely hurting someone. And that's why he is such a conscientious person, enough to be literally a conscience when he becomes the cricket. But in execution, it's kind of a mess. I like the bones of this episode, though.
It had potential. The show can be summarized with it had potential.
But yeah, they kind of do the most goofy, cartoony version of it. And also, I just think they really should have cast, like, a younger Archie, because otherwise it is a little laughable.
Also, those puppets are terrifying. Jesus goddamn Christ.
Yeah.
They're in Gold's shop, by the way.
They are!
Um,
That couple that got fucked over.
Yes.
They're in Gold's shop. It's fucking terrifying.
It's essentially horrible. And those are Geppetto's parents. And we know Geppetto has been in that pawn shop.
Yeah, that episode is fucked. That episode is a horror movie episode. Like, I joke that Gold keeps showing up in scenes like a goddamn horror movie villain, because he just sort of...
You're not wrong, though.
He is a horror movie villain. He was that in Ravenous, which
Because he keeps showing up, like, behind people. Like, 9 times out of 10, when he appears in a scene, he appears behind somebody, and all of a sudden he's there, and you're like, ah, God, what the fuck?
I mean, it's easy to forget, but many fairy tales are just straight-up horror stories that we decided, yeah, we're just gonna tell our kids this.
They're morality tales disguised as fantastic tales, but it's really just a horror story.
And also, I will admit, like, the storybook portions of this made me realize I think Archie might be husband material.
I think growing up and maturing is thinking that Archie is husband material.
He's trying. He
Yeah.
is doing his best.
I think you just have a soft spot for soft boys in situations they cannot fix, because you are someone in a situation that you cannot fix. But god damn it, do you want to try?
Damn, River. Damn, River. You're right, but you don't have to be so loud.
Listen, when I'm in season 2, you're gonna get a deep read on who I am as a person when you realize that Killian Jones was a formative crush for me. And that's all you ever need to know about me.
Yeah, unfortunately, that makes all of the sense.
Shut
But
up.
yeah, and also he has a dog, and also he stands up to Regina at the end, and it's awesome.
Yeah, the only time he does it.
Yeah, figures that Henry had to almost die for it to happen, but oh well.
unfortunately, his character regressed from there.
Henry, shout out to Jared Gilmore. I'm gonna do a brief actor interlude to shout out the best actors in this here series. Jared Gilmore, who is 10. Like, he is doing the best a 10-year-old can do. Even when I am mad at him for doing the thing that a 10-year-old would do, I'm not mad at Jared. I'm mad at the writers for knowing how a 10-year-old would act. Jennifer Morrison, who has to carry so much of this season on her goddamn back. If you don't buy Jennifer at any point, you're screwed and the show is no fun for you.
And also just the fact that, like, once an episode, you see this look on her face where she's just like, wait, is Henry right? But then you see the denial come back in. I started looking out for that.
And the few times she has to, like, break her own heart. Like, her whole speech to August of, I didn't ask to do any of this, and I don't want people relying on me because I'm a fuck-up and I can't rely on me, let alone anyone else should rely on me. And also, any speech she has to try to actually attempt parenting Henry. Jennifer Morrison is fucking killer. Shout out to her directorial career. Robert Carlyle is a given. Robert Carlyle is too good for this goddamn show. Everything makes sense when you learn that Adam and Eddie, who are the showrunners, Adam and Eddie Kiddes, or A and E as the fandom came to calling them because it was easier. When you learn that A and E only approached Robert Carlyle for Rumpelstiltskin, everything about this show slots into place. Because they're right. They're objectively right. Robert Carlyle was the only option. If you needed a veteran presence on this show, you can't do much better than Robert Carlyle for a gig like this. He is truly doing the most, even with the silliest things he has to do for this show, and he really sells magic. Finally, an open letter to Jamie Dornan.
From all of us, to be honest, I think.
From all of us. Dear Jamie Dornan, I am so sorry that those 50 Shades movies fucked up your public perception so goddamn much, because you are so fucking charming in this. Pun slightly intended.
You are a dreamboat in this.
You're a dreamboat currently. Like, I
mean,
saw
yes.
those Image magazine photo shoots with you in the curly hair and the shorts that are way too short.
Well, yes, but he's...
icon.
Well, yes, but he has never been sexier than when he was the huntsman, I don't think.
It's the soft heart and the charm and the being good with dogs and the sort of hapless idiot energy, the low-level hum of hapless idiot energy and being a bit of a pawn in a game you cannot control. I'm so sorry. The 50 Shades movies have ruined you for a generation of viewers because I, dear actor who is never going to listen to this, I know you from this. And that is the image I take forward into every single one of your other roles. And I think that's for the best.
I know you had thoughts that differ from ours, considering the fact we have drawn the conclusion Archie is husband material.
Fair enough, yes.
You have drawn the conclusion that Archie is husband material. I think he's too much of a pushover to be truly good husband material.
Okay, that's fair.
Correct. Basically, I feel like Archie is just such a frustrating character because if he had a backbone, he'd be more interesting. Jiminy Cricket should have a fucking backbone. Like, Jiminy Cricket is the moral backbone of these characters.
I mean, we talked about this a little bit. Clearly he had learned his lesson after the incident with Geppetto's parents. But of course, because of the curse, he no longer remembers that all happened. And I think maybe part of the curse is that you got this conscientious guy being forced to be under the thumb of someone who, as of yet anyway, has no conscience, but we'll get into that when we talk more about Regina's nightmare. So, Beauty and the Beast, kinda.
Emily de Ravin, hot.
Oh, yes. Not only hot, but honestly, she is clearly the glue that almost made this work. I have to...
She's so good.
She's so good.
She's amazing.
I'm always so mad about Belle because she's so good.
Yeah, Emily DeRaven is hot, and she can speechify like mwah.
And she's very clearly loving being Belle of all characters.
Who wouldn't? Who slightly older than my generation to slightly younger than my generation wouldn't? Like, Belle is an icon.
Bookworm.
So what?
Traumatized bookworm.
Listeners, River did the Farquaad point whilst doing that, just so you know.
A lot of my complaints about Belle don't happen in this season, so I can't get into all of my thoughts about Belle and Gaston and Beauty and the Beast and everything.
But no, the cracks were showing even from Skin Deep.
Oh, the cracks are fully there. Had they left it at Belle leaves because the Beast didn't change... Like, had they gone, like, the version that the Vincent Cassel version should have gone, where Lea Seydoux just walks out and leaves him to fucking die? Had they gone that route?
Who's worse?
That would have been...
Who's worse, Vincent Cassel's Beast or Rumpelstiltskin?
Vincent
by the width of a nipple hair.
Damn. Rumple tries, I guess, yeah.
Rumple makes, like, a half-hearted attempt, and he gets more screwed over by the writers, in that the writers want him to stay villainous in the later seasons, but they can't commit to that and Belle. Mm-hmm. Whereas Vincent Cassel has the version of the writers, like, the writers having the 50 Shades problem of, like, we, the audience, know where this is going, so we're willing to excuse a lot because we know how the story goes. Emily de Ravin is a great Belle. And she's so good that every time Rumbelle tries to get shoved down my throat, I get angry on her behalf. Because, bestie, you can do so much better.
I know I could treat you better. It's so frustrating, too, because you could see what they were going for here.
It, again, circles back to Rumple and Control.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. They made the right call in having it that, no, she does leave because he doesn't want to change. That actually would have been an interesting subversion.
Had they kept
it. If they stuck to their guns with it instead of having Belle being all weepy and I love you when the curse broke. It's like, no, honey, you guys got some shit to deal with.
Belle deserves better. 2K24.
And also, as somebody who does really love the Disney version, this feels like slander against the Beast in a weird way.
Truly. There's no reason for Rumple to be the
No,
beast.
Exactly. They're just shoehorned him into, like, whatever fairy tale. They keep doing that.
And also just the way they keep on emphasizing, oh, he's such a beast. It's like, because they know.
He just has crocodile skin. How's that beastly?
Insert the fucking TikTok audio about Once Upon a Time crushes and, oh yeah, Killian Jones. Ah yes, the socially acceptable one and not the scaly lizard man!
Yes, but, like, you know, yeah, you could make a scaly lizard man a beast, sure, but at the end of the day, if you're gonna keep on invoking the Disney versions, right down to the fact she's wearing the fucking dress the minute
And
we
Chip.
meet her, like,
Also, why is Belle royal in this one?
why is she indeed?
Why?
Like, this,
I do like that her kingdom is apparently Australian, because everyone gets to keep their accents.
Everyone gets to keep their accents! Her kingdom is Australian! It's
very
so
funny,
funny!
but yeah, it's weird because a lot of the first season, it's kind of back when they're trying to kind of pretend that this isn't just a Disney IP machine, but they do it so half-heartedly. It's just like, yeah, just own it.
You are a product of ABC, owned by Disney. Accept your fate.
Yeah, it's like,
Lean into it.
The only reason you're getting away with half the stuff you are getting away with is because you are owned by Disney and Disney
Yeah.
signs your checks.
but yeah, it's clear that they wanted to do the whole, they're stuck together, so they get to know each other, they bond, and then they fall in love.
It's also telling that in this version, Belle does more
Exactly.
reaching out
Belle,
than Rumple does. You learn in later seasons that Rumple did make the gesture of offering up the library.
That is
I
true.
believe. I think you learn that.
they
in
needed
second
that
season
in this
3.
episode. They needed that at moment.
Yeah, right. But they sort of withhold that reveal until later.
Which, why? To what point and purpose?
No, that doesn't even make any sense story.
Because everyone likes us suffering. Anyway, yeah, Belle does most of the reaching out. She does most of the work. She always does most of the work. And the fact that these two get married is criminal, and Rumple should have died after the end of season 3. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Fuck Rumbelle.
This is the Belle that kind of proves everybody's misconceptions about the Disney version right, unfortunately. Like, she is the Belle that's like, no, but I can fix him.
Baby
And there's
girl.
nothing-
Baby girl.
No.
He is well past fixing.
But yeah, it's just, you tried something here, and at one point it clearly worked for me, because I was a Rumbelle shipper.
I was never.
And I know Callie,
Could it be a nostalgia filter?
maybe?
Jazz and I were the
Yeah,
Rumble
and
shippers
rewatching
so
Skin Deep, we
hard.
were just like, was it always this bad?
What
Because, yeah,
happened?
he's... Like, if there's one thing I can't stand, it's when people assume that Beauty and the Beast is about Stockholm Syndrome. And frankly, this version of it does not help matters, because he literally tries to make a servant out of her. And then belittles her when she tries to help him. It's just like, why on earth did we make this one of the biggest ships of the show?
What happened with Gaston again?
He
got
turned
turned
into a
into a
rose. Yeah, this is a weak sauce Gaston.
Yeah.
You didn't even get a mob song.
How dare
That's funny.
you? He doesn't even really have muscles. How dare you?
This is the first instance where I almost feel sorry for a Gaston. I say almost, but it's close.
No, exactly. You actually kind of feel bad for Gaston, and that is criminal. If you're gonna bring in Gaston, bring in Gaston. And I know they do eventually, like, do him much better later on, but...
I use antlers in all of my decorating.
God,
Also, again, why does this town have a sanatorium under the hospital?
Yeah, well, you know, it almost... You know what? I just realized? Maybe that's another way they're invoking the Disney version, because technically so does Belle's Village.
Yes, that's where Maurice is supposed to be locked
The
up.
Maison de Lune and all that.
Why? Why?
I just realized that. That just hit me. Oh, God.
God. Anyway, alright. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Yeah.
Why do dwarfs come from eggs?
Why do they come from eggs?
Why do
Oh,
that was
boy.
specifically? There are no female dwarfs.
That is the
Eggs.
weirdest shit ever.
Who lays
Or
the
unless
eggs?
We're going with
It's
the idea that all dwarves are transgender from birth.
You know? I hate that idea less than I hate all the other ideas.
I think I'm gonna go walk into Lake Ontario, if you'll
I
excuse
remember
me.
it's still a thing. I'm pulling you back.
I'm gonna go walk into like Travis County, something or another. I
It's
don't
just
know.
a shame because it's otherwise such a charming episode, and I really like Grumpy /
Blue.
Leroy's character. Well, yeah, fuck Blue.
Fuck Blue. All my
Blue.
homies hate the Blue Fairy.
But also, I do love the portrayal of Grumpy and Snow's relationship in the Enchanted Forest and in Storybrooke.
They get to be buddies.
He's clearly her impulse control. He's like the one holding the brain cell.
They get to be buddies, and that's nice.
It is nice. Like, somehow they managed to make them feel more like the Disney version than what little we've seen of the live-action remake in the works right now. Like, somehow they feel more authentically that.
Yeah, I love the dwarfs. They're great.
They're
12
great.
out of 10. Love that they choose Snow rather than Snow choosing them.
Yeah, they just see this sad girl is just like, you know what, we're taking you in.
Is anyone gonna be this woman's friend? No? Then didn't wait for an answer.
Yeah, basically.
Yes, it's our job.
Yeah, and it's very sweet. And, you know, it's the fact that they came to her just as she's at her lowest because she had to tell Charmy she didn't love him.
Snowing are the most couple. They're one of the few canon couples that I give a shit about.
They're so good.
Which is saying something, because I don't give a shit about a lot of canon couples. But even as a little kid, I was like, no, I give a shit about these two. Maybe I Will Always Find You will be our always. To be the 2012 Tumblr bitch of it all.
It's incredible because this was an era where they were really trying to girl bossify Snow White so hard. And this stupid little show probably did it best.
They chose the Ella Enchanted model. They let them meet each other.
Yeah, and it's so good. It's so good. And yeah, it's just like all these attempts to make Snow White more of a badass. This one that arguably let her be a lot more innocent and girlish than especially Snow White and the Huntsman.
By the end of the season.
Yep.
Yeah.
The look in her eye when she's like, let's go take back the fucking kingdom? That bitch is a general!
She is, and it's great! But she's still so soft and sweet, and they balance it so well.
Ginny Goodwin is a queen.
She gets to be vulnerable. That's the one.
Yeah, she's still vulnerable. She's still a total sweetheart who loves her friends, who loves her man. And just the meat ugly of them meeting while she's trying to rob his fiancé.
I love in-character explanation for actor scars.
Yes.
I love the rock scar. Is it any surprise that Ginny and Josh, like, you watch their chemistry and you're just like,
of course you fell in love.
If I didn't know that these two weren't already married by the end of this, I would have been convinced by, like, their second or third appearance where I'm like, wow, these two, the chemistry is insane. Like, Jennifer Morrison has chemistry with everybody. It is why you buy every single ship she gets slapped with. She's a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And I have so many thoughts about that, but that's a season 3 complaint. We don't have time for it. But actually, dramatic irony, what the show knows versus what the audience knows. I mentioned earlier that the show has about 16 episodes worth of plot, but has to fill a 22 season order.
Right.
And the reason that becomes a bit of a problem is what cards do the characters hold versus what cards the audience holds.
Right.
By episode 16, the audience has all the cards. They know exactly what's going on. Mm-hmm. And they know that Henry's in the right, and they've got to wait for all of the other characters to collect their final cards to get everything, for all the dominoes to be put into place to knock everything down. This show makes great use of dramatic irony, because you, the audience, know exactly what the fuck is going on at all times, and you're waiting for the characters to catch up. They sort of mix this up. To some extent, I do think they could have kept the Regina card closer to the chest of whether or not she remembers in this here land.
Yeah.
But they decided to play it early to pay off Graham's death and why Graham dies and whatever. And, you know, see what they want about that.
So yeah, Snowing is so good that it almost makes me forgive the fact the Storybrooke storyline is wretched.
Amnesiac soulmates is a trope that needs to be used more often.
Oh, for sure, but it was used badly in case of Snowing because they had to kind of muddy the waters by making them have an affair.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so
Catherine was done dirty.
Oh yeah, for sure.
At least Catherine gets out mostly cleanly by the end.
Yeah, thank God.
I
honestly
after that meet ugly, they never demonize Catherine.
No, thank God.
Yeah, that's
and that is more than I can say for a lot of the affair episodes. And I think, like, I do agree it's a bullshit plotline and it shouldn't happen. But
the yearning would have been better.
The thing that smooths it out for me in my brain is the fact that A, Catherine is never done dirty. It is very clear that everyone is in the wrong, but there is no right. in this. Like, you did not ask for your formerly comatose husband so have half-remembered memories of a world you do not remember for curse reasons that are too complicated to get into.
Yeah.
And also, none of you asked to be in this situation, and, like, David's coma is never addressed in, like, a medical way, because, again, their head doctor is a college dropout.
Yeah. Shout out to the listeners who know what that means.
That's a season 2 reveal.
Yes.
The thing that sort of eases it for me is Catherine can only fuck it up so much because she is being manipulated on all sides.
Yeah.
And Snowing and David can only do so much wrong because they are also getting manipulated on all sides.
For sure. And, like, exactly. Like, obviously, we have to blame the curse for a good chunk of all of this. But it still just gives you a bad taste in your mouth watching it play out like that.
David is objectively a bit of a dick. But in his defense, he was also comatose until a couple of weeks ago. His brain is a bit of a scrambled egg soup.
Yeah, and also, there were moments where Mary Margaret's, like, crying over being the town pariah. It's just like, baby girl, what did you think was gonna happen?
This town is way too puritanical for my taste.
For sure. That is also true. I know I said already how Regina is kind of a petulant child in this season, but then we get to the Stable Boy episode, and I remember, oh, right.
Arrested Development! This is the thing that pops up for me, because she's clearly stuck in that teenage mode, and she literally cannot, like, pull herself out of that.
When Mary Margaret has the affair, she knows damn well this is a small town where everybody gossips. And then she opens the bag. I don't know what I expected to find here, baby girl. And I mostly blame David, because she did tell David, hey, maybe you should fucking talk to your fucking wife like a fucking grown adult. And he said, yeah, I'm gonna definitely fucking do that. And then narrator, David most certainly did not do that.
How did we manage to do 2 Arrested Development references in the span of 2 minutes?
Shout out to Emma, who is immediately like, okay, baby girl, we need to get a drink in you. Yeah. And then pours the most absurd amount of whiskey into the glass. Like, that's a triple. Emma, do you think Mary Margaret could handle a triple of whiskey?
No.
Are you certain about this?
Well, I guess we can say that Emma...
I need to see that.
Emma
has never been a bartender.
Yeah.
Thank God, oh my God.
I need to see Mary Margaret on a triple.
But yeah, no, I do love how loyal Emma is to Mary Margaret to the end. Like, A+.
I miss
their
friendship.
That's very fair. But yeah, like, Regina's whole deal being that she lost her love, and again, we discussed this, how hard she, it's fine, I get it. I do get why you're angry, but yeah, you need to move on. What really fascinated me on this rewatch was Regina's nightmare, because really up until this point, she's clearly seems to be 100%, I am in the right to do this, I am getting my fucking revenge. And that nightmare is the first time we see that, no, there's definitely something of a guilty conscience there. Because, like, all of the town yelling at her these absolutely true things about how much she destroyed their happiness. It's like, it's really the first time we see it. Okay, maybe there's still hope for you then. Since you are at least aware you are fucking everybody over. You are aware you are doing wrong. The idea that the poisoned apple isn't just a poisoned apple, it will basically trap you in nightmares of your regrets. I think that's a really banger concept.
Henry at one point has a Tron-like lunchbox. The second Tron, the Legacy sequel Tron Legacy. As a background detail is fascinating, because, like, it makes sense, because Henry has been into video games. But, like, the idea of you exist in a simulation your parents tried to solve and failed, and now you are having to go back in and finding your parent who has been held captive in a digital simulacrum of a reality while the ghost of their creation tries to devour the world whole is such a fascinating implication that I do not want to give A&E credit for developing. I think it was just a cross-branding joke because Tron Legacy was coming out at the time.
Yeah, but still.
But it has some fascinating implications in the long run.
I think
the show could have only been improved if Jeff Bridges' clue had been added to it.
That would have been funny. Here I was going to point out that he reads Marvel comics, but nope, you left no... That was amazing. That was such an incredible analysis. Bravo.
I do that sometimes. All right, Graham and the essay problem. Content warning. We got to talk about sexual assault.
Yeah.
Because Graham is raped repeatedly in this show.
Yeah.
Uncritically.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
It's not the last time it will happen too.
Unfortunately, this
Because it keeps
show
happening in later seasons as well.
this show has a problem with male sexual assault.
This show has a limit and does not brutalize its female characters in that way.
Yeah.
Its male characters, however, in a strange, fucked up version of equality,
Ugh. No.
does uncritically sexually assault at least 3 of its male characters. 4.
Yeah.
3, 4.
The fact that we have to think
Graham,
about it.
Robin, which actually produces a child.
Yeah.
A version of Killian, who I think is also assaulted by Zelina. It's like an alternate universe version of Killian.
It's somehow fitting that both the perpetrators of this are half-sisters.
And I don't remember if David ever does.
We'll have to see about that someday, unfortunately. But yeah, and it's something Callie and I both noticed in our rewatches of both this and The Vampire Diaries. Like, early 2010s, this was kind of the last time before the culture really started talking about implications of consent, sexual assault. This was kind of the dying gasps before we actually started really talking about, this is not okay. Just because someone isn't actively fighting it off does not mean it's not still a violation.
It's so weird that we started doing it in the reverse, thinking, we're making progress.
For some reason, like, genre fiction of this time was really big on the magical mind control leading to that sort of thing. And
the other thing is that it's done by villainous women.
Yes.
well, yeah.
Which has its own can of worms. Yeah. That I don't know if we really have time to fully, properly crack into in this here first season. At least in this one, it's like done under false pretenses, but it's not done under false pretenses.
It's done under, she literally has his heart in her hand, which gives...
That is coercion.
Like, she literally out and out...
Coercion.
Yeah. It's coerced, but it's not under false pretenses, which is not saying much.
She out and out says, I'm going to make you my pet, and I'm just like, ah!
Ew!
Yeah, and the other thing is that, like, you can argue about whether or not they fucked in the Enchanted Forest.
But we definitely can't in Storybrooke, unfortunately.
You can't argue that in Storybrooke. And that, again, falls into the how the writers play the cards of what does Regina remember.
Yeah.
Because Graham dies so early. Graham dies in, like, episode 8 or something. He dies stupid early.
It's heartbreaking.
Like, at first you're just greeted with, like, oh shit, Regina's, banging the sheriff. That's kind of weird and, like, a choice. But, like, whatever. Regina's allowed to have a sex life, I guess. It's just a conflict of interest on Graham's part. Whatever. And then you get the reveal that she had his heart in the Enchanted Forest. And you're like, okay, that makes their relationship now a little bit more fucked up. The writers are doing the reveal. In this particular instance, I think it's a case of uncritical writing.
Yeah.
Rather than malicious intent.
I don't think they thought of the full implications of what they were doing here. Because unfortunately in society, we don't take male sexual assault seriously. Here's the thing. I have a general rule that when it comes to fandom stuff, if the writers aren't willing to acknowledge it, why the fuck should I? And that's kind of the most egregious part about it. In the midst of trying to do Regina's redemption arc, they never address this.
They mostly forget about Graham after season 1.
Exactly, and it's fucked
up.
up.
We get a flashback.
And it's fucked up.
This is a messy thing to leave on the table.
Yeah, no. You were not prepared for the implications of this. And it's easily one of the worst things that this show ever did.
Yeah, and there's no going back from that. Like, how are you supposed to, like, attempt to redeem Regina when she does something so horrific?
Like, Rumpel doesn't have something this bad under his belt, and that's saying something, and Rumpel is way more wishy-washy morality-wise.
Yeah.
They had the decency to not do it to Rumpel, but they did do it to Regina.
Yeah.
And, again, while Lana Parelia is technically very, very white passing, she is a woman of color.
Yes.
Yeah. She is Puerto Rican. She's like me in a way.
Yeah, and so you have that layer of, you did not think this through, besties!
No.
And yeah, it's messy. It's a messy thing to leave on the table, and it is something that is never addressed, and it does not get any better. And it's a lot of yikes. I'd like to say we're better, but I would doubt it.
Yeah. Let's talk about the stuff we like about Huntsman's portrayal, though.
I've already given my open letter to Jamie Dornan.
He was so soft.
He's so soft. He is a soft boy. He has a wolf patch because he was Yep, he was raised by wolves, basically, so he kind of hates everybody besides animals.
Him and Ruby would have been such good buddies had he been allowed to live.
Yes! Oh, that would have been so good.
This falls under... Why do Ruby and Whale get to be friends, but Graham and Ruby don't get to be friends? This falls under missing
that makes no
opportunity.
sense.
Whale is the worst.
Ruby would have flirted with Graham.
Oh, so
You're
hard.
gonna look me dead in my eye and tell me that Ruby wouldn't have flirted with Graham?
100%
You're a
correct.
fool and a coward.
Yes, because we didn't really get into the fact that Ruby is like the town flirt.
There's also the implication that if she did that, that would be a shout out to the woodcutter in her original story.
Yeah, actually, which I'm not against.
This show is a lot to me in my brain. It exists as sort of a lost potential. A lot of the ways I talk about this show is like, this character had potential, this plot had potential, this show had potential, and potential is a weirder thing to mourn than something that was immediately, like, started great and went downhill. Because you're always mourning what could be. You're mourning things that should have happened had actor schedules not been in hell, had writers thought through implications for more than 10 minutes. They forgot to put the good in it. To quote Tumblr user Ghost Zone, they forgot to put the good in it.
It's such a good sandbox universe. Like, there's just so much you could do with it, with all of these stories, and all of the twists that they want to do with it.
It's like wasted potential.
I want to see a better version of this so badly.
It is so frustrating when you have a good sandbox and the writers don't know how to use the sandbox. I'm looking at you, Pleck.
We have all of our toys,
fucking
and
little...
they don't quite know how to build a sandcastle. But some of the sections of it are really fucking good.
And that is what fanfiction is for.
Truly.
Honestly, most of the Snow White stuff is really, as far...
the backbone of this
It's the backbone of the show, and for what it's worth, it's a decent backbone. In spite of all the bitching we've been doing,
it's the only one that goes all the way through and makes interesting subversions when it can.
Exactly, and the show was always at its best when it took these stories and subverted it in a way that rang true with a modern audience. Yes, give the heroines more agency. Yes, give the villains more complexities. And even for all the complaints we've made about Regina's eventual redemption arc, it's hard to deny that, yeah, her tragic backstory does add layers to this story, and it is really nice to see a Snow White that can be independent, can have agency, but is also still a fairy tale heroine with a fairy tale romance. Editor Jasmine here. This is usually the part where I would ask, why does so-and-so endure? Obviously, we can't do with all the fairy tales because, much like with the beginning, we'd be here all night. However, I have made the decision that we are going to save all thoughts about why Once Upon a Time endures for the very end of the very last video we do on the show. So, you get to look forward to that.
I love watching these actors play these characters that, at least in this first season, they all still deeply love.
Yeah.
And before any of you ask, no, we're not doing Once Upon a Time in Wonderland.
No comment.
God. Are we doing Once Upon a Time in Wonderland?
We'll debate it. Anyway.
Call me back when it's season. I'll be everyone's problem.
I know you will. I know you will. Who's got stuff to plug?
I'm Callie, and I'm the host of the podcast Postcards from Mystic Falls, a podcast where residents of Mystic Falls drag newcomers into the Vampire Diaries coven. We'll be discussing all of the shows in the Vampire Diaries universe from the CW network, which included 2 spin-offs, the originals and legacies. The Vampire Diaries premiered in 2009, and it all ultimately ended when Legacy series finale aired in 2022. We plan to air our first episode on June 21st after the convention taking place June 7th through the 9th in Covington, Georgia, where the Vampire Diaries was filmed. The convention, called June Wedding, is being hosted by Epic Events and Entertainment, and I will, of course, be at the wedding of the year. I'll be posting on all of our social media profiles, which you can find in the episode description. It's Mystic Falls. Nothing bad ever happens here.
You can find me on Twitter at DreamsRebel. It's Western Conference Finals season. All hail Otter. Dallas is gonna make it. I swear to God. All hail Otter! You can also find me on WordPress at filmlion.wordpress.com, where I've actually talked about Once Upon a Time before, and some of my observations from that have been appeared in this episode as well. But I talk about television there, and it's a great time. You should come find me.
And you can find me on the online news on Tumblr, where I post listicles, graphics, and do all sorts of fan cast requests. And my GoFundMe is still up. Donations are greatly appreciated.
And as always, you can find me on Twitter, Tumblr, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Favor Vieira. You could also follow the show on Twitter at IER Podcast. And if you would like to help us reach the next chapter of our story, please consider leaving us a review or rating us on the podcatcher of your choice, telling all of your friends and family about us. And even better, if you have room in your wallets, please consider donating to our Patreon, our Ko-Fi page, or just the support the show link below. But no matter what you do, if you're listening right now, you are part of the reason we have made it to one whole year of this podcast. And I cannot thank you enough for that. And coming up next is our Pride Month selection, which I know my listeners will be very excited about. Next week, we will be covering Black Swan, the movie that gave Natalie Portman her Oscar. Don't you dare miss it. And remember, believing in even the possibility of a happy ending is a very powerful thing. And stories gain power in each retelling.
So at some point we need to talk about that.
I mean, think of it this way. At least that episode will be just season 1. You know, back when we were able to convince ourselves it was good.
It's only the start of Henry's tangled family tree.